As I'm gonna be doing a quick mock draft here. We'll see how long I actually take with this 14 team league. See how it goes. But I've got all our settings in here. I just need to claim a spot in the draft. I'm gonna say doesn't really matter. I'll pick fourth, let's say overall. So you just pick your spot at the top. It's really easy to get into the mock draft. Um, you just go to the mock here on your draft board. You can start a mock draft. It'll save them, all that good stuff once you complete them. Obviously, I haven't done any yet, but it will save your history. So we'll just go ahead and start the draft. And so the computer, we could invite other people into this mock draft, but the computer's already gone and picked three guys. I try not to overthink this too much for the first pick. You've got your guys here. There's a lot of running backs early because they're worth a lot. Najee is a really safe pick. CMC is a pretty good pick. Obviously, a little older. Got to remember, like, young and good players with high usage. Those are usually the studs that you're looking for. Cooper Kupp was crazy good, depending on how you feel. But I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm going to pick Najee here. I'm not thinking about strategy or anything quite yet. Like, it's so early in the draft. Just pick a guy who's really good that you enjoy watching. So we'll see how things go. It very quickly will get back to my turn. All right, so and you can tell that, like, there were a lot of guys that went off the board. We started seeing some wide receivers, a couple quarterbacks went off the board. What's interesting, I don't think Mahomes went off the board. We only have Herbert and Josh Allen. Kelsey did go off the board already. Mark Andrews as well. So some tight ends. So we have options here. Got Patrick Mahomes, Nick Chubb. I really like Jalen Waddle. He's one of my favorite players. I am a Saquon fan, but I don't know if I would take him here or not. But who's going to score me a lot of points and who's going to be a great asset for a long time. And I think it's pretty safe for me. I don't have to think too much about this pick. Just kind of scrolling down to make sure. I'm pretty certain I want Patrick Mahomes here. Now this is a one QB league. I get that, like, picking a quarterback is something you're not used to doing very early in a one QB league, but you get to keep this quarterback forever. So I'd like to think Patrick Mahomes is going to have a pretty long career, so I'm going to go ahead and draft him. And now I never have to think about that position again. Like, you're always trying to draft the next great quarterback if you're spending a lot of picks trying to figure that position out. And I just like not having to think about it. All right, so we can see who went off the board. Oh, and this is a good time to talk about this setting that we have. We actually have a third round reversal. And what that means is the first pick of the third round actually goes to team 14. I really think it balances things out nicely. You can see, like, the reason I think that, let's just look at team 14, for example. They have Derrick Henry and Breece Hall, and they were able to snag DK Metcalf as well. What if you look at, like, Derrick Henry's value and Breece Hall's value versus, like, Jonathan Taylor? They're just not comparable at all. Like Jonathan Taylor is incredibly valuable. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, those guys are incredibly valuable. Derrick Henry might not have too many years left being a top running back. Obviously, he's going to be really good. Breece Hall, we know nothing about, but he could be really good. But he plays for the Jets, so who knows, right? So a couple of guys that maybe Henry falls off a cliff this year. There's some maybes here, and he was injured. There's no maybes about Jonathan Taylor, right? He's amazing. maybe the only maybe here is maybe his touchdowns regress a bit, but the important thing is like that's a very tradable, awesome piece to have on your team. And Jalen Waddle is no slouch too for Team One, right? So that third round reversal kind of it gives you a better player in that third round to balance out the fact that that first pick is just worth just so much more. It's worth more almost than Derrick Henry plus Brees Hall. Um, but we can discuss. That's my preferred setting. But feel free to discuss. So it's my turn. I need to look at players. We can look at my team really fast. What do I have? I have a running back and a quarterback. So those are two good players to compete now with. But let's take a look at the players that are out there. I don't need a quarterback anymore. Kyler's still here, which is good. Some players that I like, Deontay Johnson. I think he's really good. It's probably going to score pretty well this year. If I were to pick guys like Kittle is kind of a win now kind of piece, because he's one of those top tight ends. If we play with the tight end premium, which we haven't talked about yet, then tight ends score more. So maybe I pick him. I'm gonna assume we aren't playing with the tight end premium right now, but Fournette's here. He might only have a year or two under his belt or left to win, but I think Etienne's really talented. He is coming off an injury and he does play for the Jaguars, so that's kind of a risky pick, but I'm actually leaning that way right now for some flexibility. I just think running backs are worth a lot, and I can find maybe value later in the wide receiver range, that I can be happy with. But like the running backs, if I scroll over like the running backs here, right? The guys who are coming up next, there are some good ones, but like Etienne and Najee are kind of guys you can build your team around. And maybe uh, you could debate whatever you want. Like a lot of dynasty nerds like to build their whole team except for running backs first, like in a startup draft. But you also just like can't ignore value that you like. So Etienne's just a player I like, so I think that's what I'm going to go with. Remember, you got to watch these guys. So I'm subjecting myself to watching the Jaguars. And you can see Sleeper like projects what your next pick is going to look like. Here we're starting to look at our team, right? And we've got Najee, Etienne, and Patrick Mahomes. That's pretty solid start. You can see the team two's gone all in on the wide receivers. Not sure I'd ever pick Drake London on top of all three of those wide receivers. Um, I mean, that's an okay strategy, I guess, if you're trying to tank for a couple years. Like, there's just not going to be very many running backs left when they get back to Team Two. So Team Two is probably going to have a hard time competing. Looks like a lot of teams have taken two running backs. Team 10 and Team 8's taken two running backs. Three running backs. Team 8 is looking really solid with flex spots and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at what's available here. I am trending towards like a team that is younger and that's going to have a longer window. I talk about like peaking at the right time, right? If you pick all old players that score a lot, you might only have a year or two to compete. But looking at guys like Etienne, he might take a little longer to get going, but he's going to be good for a while. And think the same thing in Najee, although he's a little bit older of a running back. Mahomes is going to be good for a long time. So a guy I really like, that's a lot to say. A guy I really like is just sitting at the top of the board here, DJ Moore. I'm going to go ahead and pick him because he's a young receiver that I feel like is just steady. He does really well. Obviously, the quarterback situation isn't ideal, but he's proven he can put up good seasons year in, year out. So now we've got kind of 2 running backs, a wide receiver, and a QB. It's my turn to pick again. So we could really go any direction. I mean, we're trying to fill out a pretty big team here. We don't have that elite tight end. We don't have a second wide receiver. We don't have our flex spots yet. So, I mean, that's what happens when you pick a quarterback. You end up sacrificing some of those flex spots. So if I'm trying to win right now, so this is kind of the round you're like, okay, so where do I go directionally? Do I just kind of keep picking the same vein of players that are kind of young that I like, or do I start trying to snag some vets? Are there any vets that fell that I like? And one thing that stands out to me is guys like Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts are still on the board. Those are still really good quarterbacks sitting there in round 5. You can build around a guy like Prescott and possibly Hurts. So waiting is definitely a strategy. I'm not too sold on Dalton Schultz. I'm not too sold on really a lot of guys in this range. I do like Jameson Williams a whole lot. This is Jameson Williams. You sometimes have to click to know which one it is. Detroit Jameson Williams. So in my head, I'm picking between like Jameson Williams, Devontae Smith. If I pick Jameson Williams, I'm really committing to like not winning this year. There's Rashad Bateman, who's really good, young wide receiver I like a lot. Sutton's down here, but I might be able to get Sutton with my next pick. So this hasn't been like super instructive. I keep picking the top guy on the list for sleeper. I mean, this is the ADP that people go by. I am a huge Devontae Smith fan, so I'm going to go ahead and select Devontae Smith. So I've got another young receiver on my team. A lot of good young players on this team. Okay, so now we're going to start looking at, we've got, there's a bunch of wide receivers here with Mooney, Christian Watson. Maybe I don't have enough faith in right now. Jameson Williams went off the board. That would have been my other pick. So I'm still like giving myself the opportunity to compete right now. Possibly, maybe you look around the board. Let's look around the board a little bit and let's just look at the team right next to me, team 5 here. We've got Austin Eckler, James Conner, Elijah Mitchell, and Lamar and AJ Brown. Eckler and Conner are older running backs. Mitchell, I mean, how long will he last in San Francisco? Like that's more of a win now team than mine. Those are older players and kind of a question mark player with Mitchell. This person's going on, like if Mitchell plays all year for San Francisco and isn't hurt, like that's a good team. James Conner plays and isn't hurt, right? You could say that about anybody, but that person's looking to score a lot of points right now. I'm picking just talented players that I like and talented young players, right? That I think are like foundational pieces for my team. So let's see. Guys I really like right now. Courtland Sutton, really solid. I think this is Sky Moore right here. Sometimes you're going to see players without a card. Oh, no, that's Juju. Sky's probably already gone. Yeah, to me right now, I think Courtland Sutton with Russell Wilson. We can look at Courtland Sutton's card. He's had 4 years of experience. He's had some injury problems, but I think he's pretty solid. Oh, Sky Moore's just right under Courtland Sutton. I can't read. Excellent. So I could go for the upside of Sky Moore, or I could go for the kind of win now points of Courtland Sutton. I've seen Courtland Sutton do it before, like be productive before. Sky Moore could be a complete bust, or he could be amazing. And that's kind of the risk reward that you're going for on this startup draft. Are you going to pick guys with a lot of risk, or are you going to pick somebody that you feel like could be pretty productive and a solid starter for you? I'm going to go ahead and pick Courtland Sutton. Mooney was also an option. He is the wide receiver one on that team, but I just don't think the offense is that great, and I don't like drafting wide receivers in a bad offense. And yeah, I am saying the Eagles are going to have a good offense because I drafted Devontae Smith. All right, so again, top of the draft here, Pat F. I really like him a lot. Good tight end, young tight end. So my whole team is very young. Like my oldest player is what, Mahomes, uh, or Najee, something. I mean, Najee's pretty old for a running back. Cortland Sutton's probably my oldest. Like I have pretty young players. Trey Lance is sitting here and pretty interesting piece. You know, he could turn into something awesome, but am I really looking for a backup running back or backup quarterback when my team isn't even close to filled out yet? I still need a tight end. What kind of tight ends are left on the board right now that I like? So if we just go to the top here, you can scroll around. You can see tight end. We've got Freiermuth. If I'm looking for just points now, I guess Ertz would probably score a lot of points this year, but he's not going to be a guy who's around for a long time. His career is probably pretty short. And then what running backs do we have left? We're looking at some pretty rough running backs at this point. We've been skipping running back quite a bit. And that's okay. Like, if you draft a bunch of running backs early, you're going to be drafting a lot of vet running backs. We didn't get any of those. I went for these younger running backs, and my hope is my team's, maybe I don't win this year, but maybe in a couple years I can trade my picks and really peak at the right time when all these guys are still playing well. Like I expect guys like Cortland Sutton and DJ Moore to play well for a couple years, to be really productive, and Devontae Smith to really be coming into his own in a couple years. So if we keep that kind of timeline, I really like Pat Freiermuth. He's probably my pick here. I'm gonna go ahead and pick him. It gets a guy that I think is a solid tight end prospect, and yeah, it's just about getting guys you like on your team. All right, so now that we fall prey to grabbing running backs just because we don't have any, not necessarily. That's not how I'm going to operate here. I'm just going to look for players that I think have a lot of value. And maybe I'm giving away too much of my draft strategy here, and you guys are going to start stealing my players. But to me, Jahan Dotson is pretty interesting. He could be, Terry McLaurin just did sign a long-term deal, but I think Dotson is really talented. You could get yourself Brady here pretty late in the draft. A lot of these backup running backs are starting to go. And yeah, they're not not super exciting. Not super exciting. So you want to grab guys that, or at least I want to grab guys that are going to be on my team for a while, that I really believe in. And so I think I'm going to go Jahan Dotson here. Just see what he turns out to be. Whoops. I'm probably going to do maybe 2 more rounds and then call it 2 or 3 more rounds. Just like give you guys some ideas of what I would be doing with my bench with this team. Yeah, so we can see we've got one more spot to fill out. If we're playing Dynasty, we might as well start a lot of players. So I've got it set to 2 extra flex spots compared to what we had before. So now just looking at players on the board, you've got guys like Melvin Gordon, who is probably going to score a lot of points. It's going to be a solid starter this year. Robert Woods could be a solid starter. Or I could go after more rookies that I like. I could go after Rashad Penny here, who might have a good season. Or he might be worthless with Walker there. To me, I feel like another. Mm, I don't know. This is when it gets hard. This is difficult. I'm gonna go ahead and draft Rashad Penny. He's young and he had some good moments last year, so maybe he continues that. Um, all right, so now I'm looking at the draft board and I'm trying to think of a couple things. One, what's my team's likelihood of winning this year? If we look at the board, are there teams that stand out as like win now, gonna destroy me teams? Team three doesn't look super strong, but not too bad. Team five, team five drafted guys like Kareem Hunt. That's more of a win now move. So team five is looking pretty tough with a lot of running backs. Um, team six looks pretty strong ish. I mean, depending on how you feel about Dobbins. Yeah, I mean it's tough to say. Team eight needs a quarterback and a tight end, but that is a lot of points with Cook, Kamara, Jones, Elliott, Godwin. Now that's Adam Thielen. Like that team is going to score a lot of points this year as long as they grab a quarterback. Maybe they get like I don't even know who they could get that they would feel great about. Maybe Tua. Tua is a starter in this league, I think, with 14 teams. So that's a team that could be tough, but to me, it looks pretty wide open, and that's because the computer doesn't have a plan, right? They're just drafting whatever. Um, to me, I don't see. Well, I think Team 11's pretty tough, but they did use two startup picks on quarterbacks, which I don't like that. Um, yeah, I'm not thinking that any team is like running away with it quite yet. Team 14 is actually pretty strong. So I like that team with Waller, Brady, two solid running backs. Hopefully Brees plays well, and then lots of good receivers. So yeah, I would say Team 14 is like objectively better this year than mine. Um, Okay, so let's just do a couple more rounds. And so I'm now looking at players and I'm thinking, okay, do I want kind of players that are going to score now, or players that are that could go up in value a whole lot? Like to me, a guy like Justin Fields here at the top, if he plays really well this year, all of a sudden his value might skyrocket, and I could trade him for um, different players, get a lot more value than what he is right now in this draft. That's something you want to think about. Calvin Ridley, I don't want to touch. That's just a situation I'm avoiding. Um, yeah, there aren't a ton of guys like I do like Trey McBride quite a bit, and he's going to be gone by my next pick probably. But I think the likelihood of Justin Fields popping off is pretty high. If not this coming year, the year after, when the Bears actually figure there's stuff out and get him some weapons. So I'm gonna go ahead and draft Fields. I did say not to get a quarterback with two quarterbacks with early with your startup picks, and I picked two now. Um, but the value just felt like it was there. Picking players with like the intention to trade them isn't like a winning strategy necessarily, but if you really like the player, it might be worth it in this case. So, um, all right. So again, who are players that really could and pop off? Um, I've got a pretty good mix. I've got more wide receivers than I do running backs, but um, who are players that their value could climb quite a bit this year. Guy like DJ Chark, if he starts playing really well, his value could go up a bit. Galladay couldn't have a worse year than last year. You even got like guys like Kirk Cousins sitting here this far down in the draft, so you could start Kirk Cousins in this league. That's the price we paid for picking Mahomes. So I'm gonna go ahead and draft. I think I'm gonna go with DJ Chark. I just like his talent still. We'll see what we get on the way back. Um, now we're looking at guys like I don't even know, Galladay, Shakir in Buffalo could be pretty interesting. He's kind of a big dart throw there. Marlon Mack could be a starter in Houston, things like that. But you're starting to get the idea that this draft gets pretty ugly pretty quickly. We're going to draft a lot of players, right? We're going to draft a ton of guys, and we're going to start getting into names that are just you don't know who they are. We're going to have Drew Lock on teams, and we're going to have guys like Dan Arnold on teams. So it's going to get pretty ugly towards the end. We're not going to do a whole draft right now, but overall, kind of strategy, what you're thinking about with your bench spots, guys who you think their value is going to increase quite a bit if maybe in like a new situation, or maybe new players on the team that could affect their value, or if you're trying to win now, then if we were trying to win now, we'd look at players that maybe could produce some pretty solid points this year. Like Russell Gage could. I don't think he's like ultra talented and is going to be some like foundational piece to the team, but he could score some points this year in Tampa Bay, and his value could increase a lot. We only have one tight end. Everybody loves Jelani Woods for some reason, and that could be a pick. It's funny to see Gronk here as well, but yeah, that's basically it. I'm gonna go with Gage right now, and maybe just do this last pick so you can see how it gets pretty gross. All right. See if anybody falls. And what you're seeing is mostly the computer's just picking based on ADP. So who is this Cleveland wide receiver? Donovan Peoples-Jones. Right. So maybe you're a big Romeo Doubs fan, a rookie. For my team, I would probably be looking at some rookies that I like. I would be looking at maybe grabbing some running backs that the situation could break right for them, and they could be a starter. A guy like Trey Sermon, people don't like what he did last year, but what if Mitchell gets hurt? Very possible. You could pick a guy like that for the team. Well, hopefully this was helpful. And hopefully this will give you an idea of how to approach your draft. You could have gone a very different direction than the way I did, which, I could have gone with like Austin Eckler with my first pick, or and then, a Chubb, or I think Patrick Mahomes is still the right pick there. But my third pick is really where I started diverging strategy wise, right? Like I could have picked somebody who has proved it before. Like I could have picked a Kittle or a James Conner, Mike Evans, a Zeke, somebody like that instead of ETN, and really built a team that's trying to win this year or next year. And instead, I'm picking a lot of guys that I just think are going to hold value. So hopefully this is helpful. Let me know if you got any thoughts or questions, and I'll see you guys soon.